Welcome to the Northern Rural Link live streaming community virtual information session. Due to COVID, we are using all available technology to create awareness and understanding of the regulatory process as well as the project studies for the provincial environmental assessment. We're going to look at the Chief's message, the project overview for the Northern Rural Link, the team, the study areas.
Great, thank you, Mike. So I am 𝗚𝗏𝗄𝗵𝗲𝗏𝗂𝗏. I'm one of the project co-leads along with Michael Fox.
Before we start the presentation, what I'd like to do is set up the Chief's message. We have both Chief Bruce from Webequie and Chief Bruce from Marten Falls and Chief Cornelius from Webequie. They'll give a short presentation on why they're doing this. So we can get that video going, folks.
We're looking at our own rights as a First Nation. Our right to economic self-sufficiency, as our forefathers had done for millennia, and it seems that we can't move forward with that in any sort of way previous to that. So this sort of offers us an opportunity to put all our thoughts and all our actions, all our sense of working together with our team and our community to build something that we should be proud of in the future, and that we're going to use every day, and that's infrastructure. So we find that an opportunity to build a road into the Ring of Fire means an opportunity for our First Nation to have a meaningful engagement with the governments, government of Ontario and Canada, and also engagement with the business sector, the mining sector. So we find it something that we can move forward with our neighboring First Nation, Webequie First Nation. We have an opportunity to lead an environmental assessment, and as such, it's a huge opportunity for our First Nation. And our people have been training for the past 5-6 years now with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and their training programs with 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 training. I forget the name, but they provide a lot of training, and our youth have received a lot of training, and a lot of them have achieved grade 12, and they're looking for something to move on to, and we have to create those opportunities for our youth now that a lot of them have gotten that basic education and basic training education in mining field, had a way to achieve success, so that our people can be successful too.
Thanks for that, for Chief Bruce's message. Do we have Chief Cornelius? All right, we're going to have the Chief's message from Chief Cornelius.
Yeah, the way of life, the better way of life I'm talking about is, having, better housing, better roads in our community, better, communication systems in our community, and, better services in our community, including health and education, and, all those, that will make our community better as it is now. we lack infrastructure for our education buildings, education school buildings. We're overcrowded, and same with our health infrastructure. We're overcrowded. Our nurses that come to our community, they're overcrowded. There's only a certain amount of nurses that can come to our community at any time. And then we have, limited access to, doctor, and other services like dental and vision. The EA processes that we're doing is to determine, the feasibility and also the impacts to make sure that we don't overlook any impacts that may be created from developing a road in our area. And the environmental assessment has to be done in a proper way, in a manner that's satisfactory to the First Nations, even the surrounding First Nations. And we have to work closely together. So it is a good opportunity, to work together. The purpose of, trying to develop the North is for our communities to prosper, as we develop and make sure that we have, the real benefits for our community.
Welcome back, and great message. We'll have more of those messages from the chiefs as this project unfolds. I think what we'll do now is actually get into the presentation with Don and Ange, and I'll let them to do let their own introductions and their role associated with this project. So maybe we can get the presentation screen up on page. I guess on the presentation outline, and then we'll move it from there with you guys. So maybe Don, you can start.
Sure, Mike. Thanks for that. My name is Don Parkinson. I'm a consultation specialist on the Northern Road Link project. Co-presenting with me is Ange Brooks, who's the project manager. So we will take turns with different slides. Just to give you a bit of an outline as to what we're going to cover today. You saw the chief's messages. We're going to do a bit of a project overview. We're going to talk about the team, the project team, the study area, and stakeholders and participants. Ange will run through the environmental assessment process, the federal and provincial and community. And then I will talk briefly about the Indigenous Engagement, consultation and participation and the engineering studies. Ange will cover the preliminary schedule and early milestones, and then hopefully we will have a discussion with some, hopefully some calls and texts from our friends viewing and listening as well. So if we can move to the slide number 4, which is the proposed link, please. Great.
Just a point there, Don, just not to interrupt, but I forgot to mention that. For those folks who are listening, the toll-free numbers on the bottom of the screen, you'll see it there at 833-513-1223. Again, 833-513-1223. We have people in the back in the control room waiting to answer calls at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm now going to just provide a bit of a description of the Northern Road Link, the proposed Northern Road Link project. The Northern Road Link is approximately 120 kilometers, and it runs generally north-south. It links the east end of the proposed Webequie Supply Road with the north end of the Marten Falls Community Access Road, also known as MF-CAR. This road would provide a connection, ultimately, between Webequie First Nation and the provincial highway network, all-season highway network. It would also link the Ring of Fire to the community of Marten Falls, and then via the Marten Falls Community Access Road to the all-season highway network. Now, these are three separate projects. They were all initiated at different times. They all have separate environmental assessments. So just wanted to make sure people are aware of that. They are all to be all-weather multi-use roads as well. And the Northern Road Link, speaking about it specifically, it will provide a critical transportation link and significant economic opportunities for these communities and as well as neighboring communities. Next slide, please. Okay, Michael or Qasim, do you want to talk about maybe the overall project organization, and then I can get into some of the specifics from the project level? Did you want to talk to that, Qasim?
Yeah, I can provide that, Don. Thank you very much. So, Michael and I have introduced ourselves. We are the project co-leads as well as consultation co-leads on the project. Now, we are overall responsible for delivering the environmental assessment project and overseeing it. But we report to a working group, which is 4 members, 2 from Marten Falls, 2 from Webequie. From Marten Falls, we have Lawrence Baxter and Alana Downey-Baxter. From Webequie, we've got Roy Spence and Gordon Wabas, all with extensive experience, of course, being community members, but also being participants in regional dialogues, discussions, and developments. So we report up to the working group and receive our direction for the project from the working group as well. Now, the working group, through support from both Mike and myself, report up to chiefs and councils of the 2 First Nations. So that's how generally the project is set up. And then Dawn and Ange, of course, are part of our consulting team from SNC-Lavalin. And Dylan Consulting is our other consulting team partner. So jointly, this slide presents the overall structure of the project team to deliver this environmental assessment. So you will continue to see all of us and other team members in the future, right now virtually, and hopefully in the future in person at the community as well. Over to you, Don.
Thank you, Qasim. If we can move to the next slide, please. So this slide provides you with a bit of a spatial description of exactly where this project is. So as you can see, it runs from the north, the McFalds Lake area, which is the eastern end of the planned Webequie Supply Road, and it runs south to near the Marten Falls community. There are currently a couple of alternatives, which is why you see 2 legs to that shape on your map. So that's generally where the area we're looking at. Next slide, please. So in terms of project participants and stakeholders, there are many. There are a number of Indigenous communities and groups, and by groups I mean other agencies like tribal councils, etc. There are other municipalities or communities such as Geraldton or Long Lac as well. There are a number of government agencies, including but not limited to the Ministry of Energy, Northern Development and Mines, also known as ENDM, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, also known as MECP, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, MNRF, Ministry of Transportation, and the Federal Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, also known as you will all come to know as IAC. And then, of course, last but not least, there are other stakeholders such as recreational, commercial stakeholders, including hikers, trappers, hunters, outfitters, the forestry industry, the construction industry, those who hold mineral rights in the area, broadband providers, and other infrastructure as well too. Next slide, please. And for this, I will pass it over to our project manager, Ange Brooks.
Thank you, Don. I'll just introduce myself. My name is Ange Brooks. I'm a senior ecologist and the project manager for the Northern Road Link. So these next few slides explain the provincial environmental assessment process and the federal impact assessment process. There's a lot of details associated with these, but I'll just kind of skim the surface to give you a general overview. So as of right now, we know that the Northern Road Link is subject to a provincial environmental assessment, also known as EA. You'll hear the acronym EA thrown around a lot during this whole project throughout the coming years. The project may also be subject to the federal impact assessment, the IA. We don't know that as yet officially. That'll be coming a little bit farther down the road. Okay, next slide. So the provincial environmental assessment, or EA, I'll just call it EA from now on. The various components of it. So we'll be assessing the potential project effects, and the various mitigation measures will be identified. We'll be collecting a lot of data in the field from many disciplines, from geotechnical, hydrogeology, all of the biology aspects, breeding birds, fish, vegetation, species at risk. We'll also be gathering Indigenous knowledge, and we'll have a lot of consultation inputs along the way. We just have a couple here examples of potential impacts and mitigation measures. Of course, there is a gigantic list, but just to sort of scratch the surface, one potential impact is flooding or, fish passage issues at some of the culverts. So one of the ways we mitigate those potential impacts is through culvert design and proper sizing. Another potential impact is dust from construction, and the way we mitigate that is through dust control. And usually that's just placing water on the road. Next slide. All right, so the EA process. There's two major phases to it. The first phase is the planning phase, and we're sort of teetering on the verge of entering this phase. This is the terms of reference, and actually the start of the terms of reference is the notice of commencement of the terms of reference, and we're going to be publishing that in the very near future. The second phase of the EA process is what's called the doing stage, and that's the actual environmental assessment. So that's when what I was discussing before with the potential impacts and the mitigation measures, that's where we get into the meat of it. It's after all of the field work, all of those components have been completed, and we get into addressing potential impacts. All along both of these stages, there's lots of consultation and engagement with Indigenous communities and other stakeholders. One thing I should mention with the terms of reference, that is a very large document that basically lays out how we will perform, maybe that's not the, how we will
execute, I guess.
Execute. Thank you, Dawn. The environmental assessment. So it explains the process from beginning to end, from the basics of how we will do all of the fieldwork components, all of our various protocols that we have to follow, specifically for biology, because I'm a biologist. And it lays out everything from how the EA itself will be written. So it's a really large document. It takes quite a bit of time to put together, and there's lots of time for review and engagement throughout that process. All right, next slide. All right, so this next slide actually shows the terms of reference flowchart, and the acronym for the terms of reference is the TOR. You'll also hear that acronym quite a bit. So this is where we are right now, the notice of commencement of TOR. One thing I should mention in these flowcharts, where you see the little yellow people, that's where we have formal opportunity for Indigenous consultation and public participation. So once we publish the notice of commencement, that will be sent out to all of the stakeholders, and it will give everybody a chance to comment on the note of the commencement of the terms of reference. I'm not going to go through this whole thing in everything because there's a lot of information here. I'll just go through where the other engagement opportunities are. So, like I said, notice of commencement. The next thing is the notice of draft of terms of reference for review. On our schedule, I believe we have the draft terms of reference submitted late this summer. So once that's submitted, there'll be more opportunity for engagement and comment. And then lots of comments will come in from all sorts of stakeholders and agencies, and we'll respond to the comments and prepare the final terms of reference. And then when we get to the submission of the final terms of reference, that's where we have our next opportunity for formal engagement. And that's not until March of 2022. So almost a year from now. And then from there, again, it goes through a whole other round of comments and engagement opportunities. Okay, next slide. So this is the actual EA process flowchart. So here we are again with the notice of commencement of EA, and you'll see the little yellow people again where this is opportunities for formal engagement. So let's say we've submitted the notice of commencement and we start preparing the draft EA for the terms of reference, I mean, right? So this is exactly what I was talking about, formal consultation and engagement. After we've gone through the entire tour process, so this will be in March of 2022, and we start the actual writing of the EA document. And there's a bunch of steps. So we have final EA, EA review, lots of consultation and meeting, lots of agencies, and then a final decision, and then monitoring as a final step. It takes a few years to go through this entire process. All right, next slide. So here we are with various participation opportunities. Off to the right, you'll see this is the little notice of commencement. Everybody will see this published shortly in various newspapers and other publications and online, as well as provided in the mail and emails. So for the terms of reference, there are 3 key points where notices are posted. I keep going on about the notice of commencement. That's the first one. That's where we are. When we get to the finalization of the draft terms of reference, there'll be another notice similar to this one. And then same with the final tour, another notice posted. When we get into the actual environmental assessment stage, there'll be a notice of commencement of the EA. And same with the draft and the final. So there's lots of notices throughout this entire process and lots of opportunity for engagement. All right, our next slide. So this next slide is showing the stages of the federal IA process. They call that the impact assessment. So right now we're in the pre-planning stages. So whereas the provincial EA has the terms of reference document, the federal IA process has us prepare what's called an initial project description. Sort of similar to the terms of reference, but it's a lot shorter. It's not as detailed. And then we submit this initial project description, and IAC, as Don explained, reviews it. And after their review, that's when they determine if, yes, the project will be subject to a federal IA process. And at that point, the impact agency will submit to us a what's called the why can't I think of it, Don? The 𝗙SCI.
Tailored Impact Statement Guidelines.
That's right.
Yeah.
Think of that. So the Tailored Impact Statement Guidelines is like a terms of reference. It's provided to us from IAC, and it lays out exactly how they would like us to, for example, conduct all of the field programs, everything from geotechnical all the way through all the biology programs and all the way down through the process of the EA. So they prepare basically a terms of reference for us. This planning stage, so we planning to submit the initial project description later this summer, and the planning for the federal EA will start in the fall, and it'll go through the similar process as the provincial EA. And what we're hoping to be able to run what's called a coordinated EA process, so that the provincial and the federal follows along around the same time schedule. Hopefully it doesn't get out of alignment. We're hoping that it stays in sync. That's the plan for now. And then the next slide. So the next thing with the federal IA process, and they submit to us a 𝗙SG, the Tailored Impact Statement Guidelines, and at the same time, we are preparing our study plans for all the various disciplines, basically the VEC, so the valued ecological components. So everything from climate change and air quality, air and noise, geology, vegetation, birds, species at risk, human health, you name it, we have a study plan for it. And all of those study plans include details of how the field program will be conducted and how, basically how it will be, the impact assessment will be conducted using the data that was collected in the fields. And next slide. So this is a really complicated slide showing the coordinated provincial and federal process. Again, all these little yellow people are the formal engagement points. What I want to point out here is while we're running both the federal and the provincial EA at the same time, both Webequie and Marten Falls are running their own sort of environmental assessment at the same time. And that's based on their guiding principles. I remember that Webequie has the three-tiered model, which we'll be talking about at a later date. So I don't know what else I can say about this. It's a little bit complicated. I don't think we need to get into all the details about this at this point, but this is the long and detailed process. You can certainly ask questions at any time. And next slide. So the initial stages, which is where we are now, is we have to prepare the project description and the terms of reference. So within those documents, we identified the various project activities. And like I said, that is everything from all the fieldwork, including all of the construction. We described the environmental setting of the area. We identify potential effects and mitigation measures, and that's for all stages of pre-construction, construction, and monitoring. We will prepare, consultation plans. We will be engaging with all of the communities within this process. And as well as responding to agency comments as they come in, depending on when various things are submitted for review. And the next slide, I'm going to hand it back over to Don.
Thank you, Ange. This slide is, as you can tell, is focused on discussing Indigenous engagement, consultation, and participation. One point I want to make is that the Indigenous knowledge that we collect as part of this project does get incorporated into virtually every aspect of the environmental assessment. It doesn't sit in one compartment in the EA. It sits within all of the studies that are conducted as part of the EA. In terms of consultation being delivered, as of right now, consultation has to be done remotely, and we are paying very close attention to when restrictions in communities will be removed or partially lifted at least. We are hoping this will happen We've assumed September 2021. We are hoping if vaccinations go well, this could be earlier. In fact, we're expecting this to happen earlier. So we're looking forward to actually being in communities, because we know this is, even though this virtual approach is effective, nothing beats being physically in the communities and talking to people and collecting that very important information. We make every effort and have on our respective projects in the region to include community members in our field studies to the greatest extent possible, whether as supplying materials, supplying services. COVID has really affected this, and it's unfortunate. There's been a number of opportunities missed by communities because of these tight restrictions and understandable restrictions. So we are hoping that once these restrictions are lifted, we can get as many community members involved in the work to the greatest extent possible. As part of our work, we have an Indigenous participation plan, and part of that involves some technology, the use of a type of technology, a three-dimensional virtual reality type technology that we will use to profile different jobs, both on this project and down the road in other stages of the project. And the idea of that is to allow community members to get a better, deeper understanding of potential roles that they may be able to play on this project at different stages. And we think this is an effective way, will be an effective way of maybe encouraging more participation, because they'll get a much deeper understanding and insight into what a job may involve, because it creates that virtual reality experience. So we hope to get that underway as soon as possible. We will also be doing capacity building to optimize job opportunities. We will be meeting with community members in both communities, talking to them and finding and profiling them to find out what interests them, and seeing if we can suggest a stream for them to follow in terms of training as well. So that's an important program to our team, and we fully intend to make sure that we can execute that as soon as we possibly can. Ange, this one's mine, Ange. Preliminary engineering design. Sorry. So I just wanted to cover this. This is an aspect that we haven't talked about so far yet in the presentation, but it's a big part of the work that we're doing. So the road is going to be designed for obviously safety, for the area within which it will sit. So we'll be looking at drainage and other environmental considerations. As well, there's the practical side of things, which is looking at its constructability given the challenging terrain, and as well as cost and maintenance cost as well. So construction cost and maintenance cost, because they do cost money to maintain over time. And so it will be designed for those purposes. Preliminary design criteria will be developed, and those criteria will relate to things like the depth of the road, meaning the thickness of the road, the base, the thickness of the base of the road, the width of the road, the geometry of the road, so the curvature of the road, so the two-dimensional positioning of the road and shape of the road, and then the three-dimensional aspect of things, the slope of the road, so the steepness of the road. All of these things, of course, are tied to safety, and design speed, recommended design speed is something else that's factored into this. And then, of course, we can't ignore things that are associated with the road, such as the water crossings, whether they're bridges, and sizing these bridges and culverts appropriately to take into consideration factors such as climate change and different events that and fish passage as well too. So there's a number of considerations, and There will be, as I touched on a little bit earlier, engineering studies looking at, how steep the road is. So the vertical alignment of the road, that's what we call the vertical alignment. So the third dimension of it, and then the geometry, the horizontal, what we call the horizontal alignment. That's the terminology you'll see quite a bit. And then, of course, as part of this, you need materials to build the road. So a big part of this exercise is identifying where to find the materials, such as gravel and rock, that will be needed to build the road. And the idea is to find locations that have not only enough of this material, so an adequate supply, both during construction and for ongoing maintenance as well too, because that need will still be there to maintain the road down further down in time. So that's a big factor, looking at these sources of gravel and rock and trying to identify locations that are as close to the road as possible to limit the distances that the material will have to be hauled, and also to limit the length of things like access roads, because of course it's not just a road. There are other elements of infrastructure that are associated with that road. So all of these things have to be considered. And Ange, I will now pass it over to you to talk about schedule.
Thanks, Don. So this slide is just showing a really high level, brief rundown of our schedule. So year one was from January of 2021 to March of 2021. So it was actually only 3 years. So we're using the actual federal government fiscal year as the end of the year. So year one and year two is from January of this year to March 31st of next year. We're going to be doing a lot of things, which includes background data review, a gap analysis, the notice of commencement of the terms of reference, as well as a lot of early engagement, consultation. We'll be working on the draft and the final terms of reference, the initial and detailed project description. We'll be starting field studies this summer, and as well as starting the preliminary engineering. And throughout all of this, we'll have ongoing consultation and engagement. Into year three, which starts April 1st, 2022 and runs until the end of March in 2023, we'll be completing a second year of field studies, working on the draft EA report and draft impact statements. So that's the provincial and the federal reports. Continuing on the preliminary design report for engineering, as well as ongoing consultation and engagement. And then year four, which is getting towards the end of the process, we'll be getting lots of comments from stakeholders and from agencies. We'll refine the design of the road. We'll finalize the EA and the impact statement, as well as continued ongoing consultation and engagement. And that is the very, very high level of the schedule for this project.